ask Sharice to call the roll and ask for the appropriate information from each attendee.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Raggio. If you can please state your name, the address of your location, and if there are any members of the public or of the also of the board that are there with you. So, Dr. Raggio.
My name is Marcia Raggio. I'm located at 333 Gellert Boulevard, Suite 118, Daly City, California, and I have no public members with me, or no members of the public with me.
Thank you. Ms. Chang.
Hi, my name is Karen Chang. I am a public member and I am at Galeris Family Education Center, 427 West Carroll Avenue, Room 2, Glendora, California, 91741. And I have Gilda Dominguez with me. She is a board member. And no one else.
Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Chang. Dr. Valdez.
Hi, my name is Julio Valdez. I'm a board member. I am located at Stanford University at 291 Campus Drive at the Alway Building, room 315. And there's no members of the public here.
And Dr. White.
Dr. White, I'm at the board office at 1601 Response Road, Suite 260 in Sacramento, California. And there are board members, board staff in the room with me.
All right, you are ready,
Okay.
Dr. Raggio.
Okay, thank you. Looking at the agenda, we've completed number one,
Sorry,
number
Dr.
two,
Raggio.
public.
I
Yes.
apologize. I forgot I'm supposed to go to the other location. My apologies. We also have another board member who is not a part of the committee, but who is open, and that is Mr. John Danduran. And can you state your name, your membership, and then your address?
Hi, my name is John Dandurand. I was just appointed to the board. My address is, I am at Simi Valley Public Library at 2969 Tapo Canyon Boulevard in Simi Valley, California. There are no public members here.
Thank you. Apologies, Dr. Raggio, you can proceed.
Okay, looking at agenda item number two, public comment for items not on the agenda. Can I ask the moderator to open for public comment? And I presume the moderator will ask the location for the public comment.
Absolutely. We are now open for public comment. I'll be displaying instructions on the screen in just a second here. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. We will call on people in the order we receive requests, and let's start with online, and then I'll cycle back to in-person locations. So our first request comes from Michael Schmidt. Hold on just a second. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Michael.
Accepted the unmute. This is Michael Schmidt. You here?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Michael Schmidt. I'm a audiologist practicing in Southern California. I have, it's not really a comment, it's almost like a customer service inquiry. We have been trying to get licensed the hearing aid dispenser under my tutelage 3 times over 4 years, and the board just does not seem to be processing properly. The last iteration was a online, which I hear is new, versus a paper application. This is for a hearing aid dispenser trainee license. And that it was, at least the payment was accepted, and in 5/23 of 23. There was some online application questions filled out by me. My latest information on that was completed. It indicated that it was completed, but we have no confirmation to the trainee as to whether or not the license, trainee license has been accepted, enacted, and which brings up a question of when is the time frame, because these are all time constants. Is it the time when the application is deemed complete by the board, or is it the time when it was submitted, the time the check was or online payment was made? But we're having great difficulty getting any kind of information on this regard. So it's a problem that we seem to be having going over the last 3 or 4 years. And that's my comment / question. I guess the major question is who can we contact, because phone calls don't seem to be getting returned. There doesn't seem to be a contact person to get this going, and totally befuddled. So I don't know who wants to respond to that, or if you just listen to questions. With that, I think I'm done with my comment.
Thank you, Michael. Since that one's not a comment on the agenda, I'm just going to go ahead and give some additional guidance that you can go ahead and email speechandhearing@dca.ca.gov. Attention, Sharice, and please provide me the workflow number for that online application so we can find out what's going on.
So a workflow number, where would I find that?
In any email that you got, it has a workflow number. It should have had something like an HA, a trainee, and then some numbers at the end of it. So any of the emails you got from the system.
And so
I would just start by sending the email, because this is public comment. I don't think we want to really go too much into this, but I would start with the email. And thank you for your call.
Just make sure to put attention Sharice in the subject.
Sharice, okay. And can you spell Sharice for me, please?
Cherise.
Thank you.
And this is Michael Connotes, legal counsel. Just briefly for members of the public, we can't address, public comment is the opportunity to address the board. I think that was pretty harmless, but we can't address questions and have discussions with members of the public. Thanks, and please continue.
Thank you. We had some hands up that have disappeared. Next on the list is Diane Roberts. Anyone who had a hand up, I would encourage them to put it back up if this is for comments not on the agenda. Diane, we're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, I am Diane Roberts. I am a member of the public. I am a speech pathologist with 28 years of experience, and I have come here a month ago from Colorado to do a travel job in your lovely state. I had known a few months ago that there was some delay in getting licensure, but I thought, well, that'll be resolved by then. But it has not. My application was accepted on July 25th. I moved to California early to get the live scan fingerprinting done. So that's been done and has been noted as received on the licensing website. I did call, I was very lucky apparently, and I called yesterday and got a hold of a very kind woman who explained to me that out of the 4.5 full-time equivalent analysts, 2 of those analysts have been promoted out of the group and have not yet been replaced. And a third person who has graciously postponed their retirement to help the rest of the team has decided that the end of the month is enough. And so that person will also be leaving. So then they will be down to 1.5 full-time equivalent analysts. Now, according to the website, the current time frame for processing speech pathology and audiology license applications is 12 weeks. So they have currently, and I verified this with her, they have currently looked at and assessed all of the applications through May 25th. That being said, since my application was accepted on July 25th, I have 2 more months or more, because that one extra person will be leaving the analyst committee, before I can expect my license in California. Now, I am a member of many groups on Facebook of speech pathologists across the country, and there is widespread concern among speech pathologists, audiologists too, I'm sorry, I'm just not a member of those groups, that people cannot work. People cannot work. New graduates who've completed their clinical fellowship year are not able to get licensed in time to be able to continue their jobs. People who are renewing their licenses are also in the same boat and cannot apply for relicensure or continued licensure before 90 days out, but apparently 90 days is exactly how long it's taking right now to get their license renewed. So everyone is in this boat waiting and waiting. And if you look at the want ads, and I think you all know that there are hundreds of jobs not being filled in schools, in hospitals, in nursing homes. And I really, at this point, sorry for my rant, I'm closing up. Something has to be done, in my opinion, to refill the positions on this committee. I understand that government employment is a process, a bureaucratic process, but if you could even arrange to transfer people, analysts from physical therapy, occupational therapy, those are close enough, I think that that would help. Because it's just going to get worse if you're down to 1.5 FTEs. And I am assuming that this information was correct, and assumptions may lead us astray sometimes. But that is what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. And then looks like our last comment was somebody who wrote in, "Hi, I'm speech language pathology audiology in Glendale. Frank Lantherman Regional Center. Since I got my license, I informed that I cannot deliver speech services to my home, in my area. But all my coworkers in another area would be able to deliver the services to home. Why? I wonder why that is. Why is that?" And that is the end of our request for public comment. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we need to poll each public location.
Oh, yes. Bear with us just a second here. I don't have the locations listed.
I can go ahead and do that if you would like.
Yes, please.
Is there any comments from the location for Galeras Family Education Center? Karen or?
There is nobody here except for
Okay,
us.
thank you. Dr. Raggio, can you confirm if there's any public comment at the hearing science of Daly City?
I can confirm that there is not.
John Danduran, can you confirm whether there's any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library?
I can confirm there is not.
Dr. Valdez, can you confirm if there's any public comment at the Stanford University Li Ka-shing Center for Learning and Knowledge?
I can confirm there is not.
Thank you.
And Sharice, I presume there's no comment at the board office.
There is no comment at the board office.
Sorry, they can't be a little smoother, but that's how we have to do it for a traditional teleconference.
No worries. I'll try not to forget myself.
And Madam Chair, this is the moderator. Looks like we have a phone request for comment. Dave Cummings, yes, you would hit *3 to raise your hand. All right, hang on just a moment. Dave Cummings, I've sent you a request and you're unmuted. Wonderful. All right, Dave, we see you're unmuted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Cummings, and I represent SLP Tele. We are a Orange County-based organization with about 150 therapists that actively work. And really, just my comment is that we are very supportive of the upcoming changes to the regulations for the SLPA supervision. And we're just really inquiring to the status of that, or if that's going to be part of the agenda, I don't know, but we're supportive of that and looking forward to implementation. And the reason why I'm here is just to gain some insight on the status of that, those regulatory updates. Was that a mic drop moment?
No, hold on just a moment. I believe I hope our legal counsel backs me up on this, but I believe that the board is not allowed to engage with the open question the way you've asked it, but there should be a regulations update on the agenda if I'm not mistaken.
David, you are correct. There is a regulations update later on in the agenda, and we appreciate your comment.
Thank you so much. We just wanted that I have a couple of folks here and we are very interested in that and how it pertains to our telehealth services. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. And with that, there are no other requests for public comment online. Do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. So continuing with the Audiology Practice Committee agenda, item number 3, update, discussion, and possible action regarding audiology licensing requirements related to supervised clinical and professional experience as stated in Business and Profession Code sections 2532.2 and 2532.25 and Title 16, CCR section 1399.152.2. So I believe we're going to call on Maria Lorenzo to introduce this issue.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. Maria Lorenzo, Regulation Analyst. The Audiology Practice Committee directed board staff to work with DCA Regulations Council to draft regulatory language to clarify statutory changes related to supervised clinical experience. And so we did make the changes to specify the number of hours of clinical experience hours for audiologists, applicants who completed a doctoral program. And so if you look at the text, you'll see that we included the business and profession code section that's specifically for audiologists with a doctoral degree. We also included licensed dispensing audiologists as someone who can supervise applicant clinical experience. And it's just to clarify, just to be more clear on who can supervise. And then in subsection C, we pulled out audiologists from the list. So it's just requirements for clinical experience hours for speech language pathologists. And we created 2 sections for audiologists, one before the requirements for the doctoral program was implemented, and then the other one for applicants of doctoral program. And the committee determined from its last discussion from surveys result that they didn't need to change the hours. So we made the hours the same. And then we just relettered the last one. And I do want to know that the last one should be F and not E. So it will need to be amended, but that is all the changes we made. And if there are any questions or comments, we're open to answer anything.
So I'd like to ask the practice committee members if there's any discussion, any further discussion regarding this item.
This is Dr. White. My only question was just for clarification, the way I'm reading the 300 clock hours of clinical experience in 3 different clinical settings. Is there any way to clarify, is that 300 in each of the 3 clinical settings or across 3 clinical settings? 300 total hours across 3 clinical settings? For C, D, and E.
Question, Dr. White. It should be clarified a little bit that it means over, I presume it means over the 3 clinical settings.
Yeah, I assume that as well. I just wasn't sure it was clearly stated.
You're right. It isn't clear. So Maria, would that be just a small wording change there that could be performed to clarify that?
Yes, we could do that. Don't have anything that comes up to mind.
I think across
Across. Okay.
instead of in 3 clinical, say across 3 different clinical.
Great. Noted.
Or if you wanted to add a total of somewhere. A total of 300 clock hours of clinical experience across 3 different clinical settings.
That sounds good to me.
To start each of them with a total of.
That's all I had.
Okay, I think that the changes on the document are pretty true to our discussion last time. So I think this is in pretty good shape other than the change that Dr. White just mentioned. Is there any other comment from the committee about changes or concerns? Okay, hearing none, the action requested is that the committee may wish to determine whether or not to recommend regulatory language to the board to initiate rulemaking process. I'm not exactly sure what language you need us to come up with, or the committee can come up with it without your guidance, but it's always helpful since you are responsible for the regulatory packages and do such a great job that you might give us some guidance on that.
Give her a recommended motion.
The recommended motion could be that the Audiology Practice Committee recommends to the board to adopt proposed changes to supervise clinical as stated in Title 16 CCR, Section 1399.152 as amended.
Okay, that sounds good. Anybody make that motion?
Dr. White, I can make that motion. Do I have to repeat it all? Nope. Okay, I will move.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Karen.
Can I ask
the second?
Can I ask the moderator to open for public comment?
We have a first and a second on the motion for agenda item 3. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen in order to request a comment. There will be a time limit of 3 minutes for public comment, and I'll give you a 30-second warning. Looking around, does not appear that we have any request for comment from our online audience. Shall we check physical locations?
Yep, I'll go ahead and name them all. At the board office, is there any public comment, Dr. White?
No, there's not.
Ms. Chang, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center?
No, there is not.
Karen?
No, there is not. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
No, there isn't.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
No, there's not.
Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
No, there's not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any of the remote locations.
This is the moderator. Madam Chair, would you like to continue with the motion?
Oh, have you closed for public comment then?
I believe we've closed for public comment.
Okay. If there isn't any further discussion, I would like to call vote on the motion.
Dr. Raggio.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
Dr. Valdez.
Aye.
Dr. White.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. So with that, I'd like to adjourn the Audiology Practice Committee meeting and move to the full board meeting. So I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology and Hearing Aid Dispensers Board. Today is August 25th, 2023, and it is approximately 10:47. I would like to ask Charisse to call the roll with the location.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. And just as a reminder, go ahead and state your name, your address, and if there are any members of the public or the board there with you. Dr. Raggio.
My name is Marcia Raggio. I'm at 333 Gellert Boulevard, Suite 118, Daly City, California, and there are no members of the public here.
Ms. Chang.
My name is at Galeras Family Education Center, 427 West Carroll Avenue, Room 2, Glendora, California, 91741. And there is a board member here with me, Ms. Gilda Dominguez.
Thank you. Mr. Danduran.
I'm John Dandurand. I am a board member. I am located at Simi Valley Public Library, 2969 Tapo Canyon Road, Simi Valley, California, and there are no public members here.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, you can just say you're here.
I am here.
Dr. Valdez?
I'm Tulio Valdez, otolaryngologist. I am at Stanford University at 291 Campus Drive, Alway Building, room 315.
Thank you, Dr. White.
Amy White at the board office, 1601 Response Road, Suite 260, Sacramento, California, here with board staff.
Thank you, Dr. White. We are all here and a quorum has been established.
Thank you. I'd like to move to swear in our new board member. So, Mr. Dandaran, if you could unmute your microphone, I'm going to ask you to take the oath of office. Of course, I can't see you, but I need you to raise your right hand as we go through the oath.
Okay.
Let me know when you're unmuted. Great. Okay, are you ready?
I am ready.
Repeat after me. I, please
John
state your
Dandaran,
name, do solemnly swear or affirm
solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and I will bear true faith and allegiance
and I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
Constitution of the State of California.
And I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties in which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations and welcome to the board.
Thank you.
We've waited a long time for you.
Well, I do appreciate that. I've been asked over the years, and I figured it's probably time in my life that I would like to spend some time and serve the board if I can. So I'm happy to be here, and hopefully I can add what little bit of knowledge I may have over the years to assist the board and obviously the consumers of California.
Well, thank you and welcome again. I would like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are going to open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Better yet, raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users may dial *3 to raise a hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We will give a time limit of 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 30-second warning.
This is Michael. Let's be open for comment on item 2 as well as item 3, public comment for items not on the agenda, so we don't do public comment twice in a row.
Thank you. You read my mind.
All right, you heard them. We are open for public comment on items 2, public items not on the agenda, and 3, the swearing in. We're looking for a raised hand or the word comment in the comment box. We're going to give it a few more seconds, and then we're going to check with our in-person locations. All right, I see a hand raised. Hold on just a moment. Serafin Raya. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Members of the board and members of the public, I am Dr. Serafine Raya, and I'd like to comment on the current timeframe for licensure. It's setting a bad first impression of the board for professionals interested in practicing in California, is unprofessional, and is detrimental to both our clinicians and overall, more importantly, to our consumers. Our colleagues in Colorado are licensed in 2 weeks. In Washington, it's 2 days. In Pennsylvania, it's 4 weeks. In Iowa, it's 2 weeks. Within California, our physical therapy colleagues are licensed within a week, optometrists within 1 to 3 weeks. Due to an inability to work within my chosen profession and a need to pay for living expenses, I applied for a masonry license. That took 10 days. Expecting recent graduates and recent transplant to wait 16 weeks to be able to start working is cruel. How many of us right after graduation had enough savings to last us 4 months? However, your role here is to have the best interests of the patient and the consumer. How do these excessive times for licensure serve the consumer? The very people the board is here to protect, when there are willing and qualified providers waiting to do just that, provide care. In San Diego, we have medical sites with wait times of November for a hearing test due to a need for audiologists. Today, I hope to hear the reason behind these wait times, the reason for the lack of transparency, as other speakers have noted, and what plans the board has to fix this problem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And there do not appear to be any other requests for comment online. Shall we check our physical locations?
Yes. Dr. White, is there anyone at the board office with public comment?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there anyone at the Galeras Family Education Center for public comment? I'll circle back. Dr. Raggio, is there anyone at the Hearing Silence of Daly City for public comment?
There is not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there anyone at the Simi Valley Public Library available for public comment?
No, there's not.
Dr. Valdez, is there anyone at Stanford University there for public comment?
No, there's not.
And Ms. Dominguez or Ms. Chang, is there anyone at the Galeras Family Education Center for public comment?
No, there is not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any remote location. And that concludes public comment on agenda items 2 and 3.
Okay, thank you. Let's move along to agenda item 4, review and possible approval of the April 27th, 2023 board meeting minutes. Maria Lorenzo, would you like to open this topic?
Thank you, Dr. Raja. Maria Lorenzo, Legislation and Regulation Analyst. The minutes includes updates of board activities, including the Business Modernization Project. At this meeting, the board took a position on 5 legislations, modified proposed regulatory changes regarding SLIPA supervision, and proposed changes to regulations regarding hearing aid dispensing, advertising, continuing professional education for SLPs and audiologists, and continuing education for hearing aid dispensers.
Okay, thank you. Is there any board discussion, changes, amendments to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
Dr. Wyatt, make a motion to accept the minutes from the April 27th, 2023 board meeting.
Hello, yes, this is Gilda. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is just a clarification on page 5. The fourth paragraph from the bottom, or statement from the bottom, regarding Ms. Burns replied that they can for the second 15 procedure. I propose adding an S on that to make that plural. to clarify that that is a grouping of procedures.
It's been noted. Thank you.
Would you like to revise your
Okay,
motion?
we
I
need a
would
new
like to-
motion. to
Yep,
accept as
Dr. White to
amended.
make that motion to accept those minutes as amended.
Do we have a second? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Was there a second?
Karen, I can second. Can you hear?
That was Ms. Chang?
Yes.
That was Ms. Chang.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are accepting public comment on the motion for item 4. If you would like to make a comment, please raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants to request. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. And we're going to wait just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for comment online, shall we check the in-person spaces?
Absolutely. Dr. White, is there anyone for public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there anyone at the Galeras Family Education Center for public comment?
There is not.
Dr. Raggio, is there anyone at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There is not.
Is there anyone for public comment, Mr. Dan Duran at Simi Valley Public Library?
There is not.
And Dr. Valdez, is there anyone for public comment at the Stanford University location?
No, there is not.
There's no public comment at any remote locations. And public comment can be concluded.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 5 is the DCA update. I hope that,
Dr. Raggio?
yes.
I just need to call the roll for the vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
So we do have a motion on the table and we do need to call a vote. Sorry.
Dr. Raggio?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Mr. Dan Duran?
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez?
Aye.
Dr. Valdez?
Aye.
Dr. White?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 5. I was distracted by looking at the list of participants to see if a DCA board and Bureau Relations individual is here to give us the DCA update, DCA board and Bureau's relation. I have Judy, I don't want to mispronounce the name, is it Bucciarelli?
Bucciarelli, and we have Ms. Bucciarelli in the board office with us.
Okay, wonderful.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Judy Bucciarelli from the Department of Consumer Affairs, Board and Bureau Relations. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today and present the DCA update. On behalf of the department, I would like to welcome John Danduran, the newest member of the board, and extend thanks to all of the board's members who serve to protect the people of California. To begin this morning, I'd like to provide an update for diversion, equity, and inclusion, also referred to as DEI. On May 12, 2023, DCA's DEI Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting in person and elected Yefana Lamar as chairperson. Ms. Lamar currently serves as the department's tribal liaison and is the chief of legislation for the Contractor State License Board. In addition, Paul Sanchez, your executive officer, was elected to serve as a vice chair of the DEI committee. During the meeting, the committee discussed a variety of topics, which included training, strategic planning, and other DEI activities. Providing employees access to DEI training is a priority for the steering committee, and in June, DCA began offering 3 DEI courses, which are available to all DCA employees. The courses are Understanding the Value of DEI in the Workplace, How to Decode Our Unconscious Bias, and Unleash the Power of Generational Differences. The response from employees to participate in these new DEI learning opportunities has been significant, with high registration and attendance numbers. DCA is comprised of approximately 3,500 employees, and the department is tracking training statistics quarterly. As of June 30th, Solid has provided 19 DEI-related trainings for 733 DCA employees. The steering committee is pleased to announce that outside consultant, Dr. Bernard Gibson, will provide in-person DEI training to DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders in October. In addition, Dr. Gibson will provide virtual training to board members on the morning of October 9th. Dr. Gibson has 20 years corporate experience managing teams and training employees in business effectiveness, and has extensive teaching experience at various colleges, including serving as adjunct faculty since 2006 at University of Massachusetts School of Business and Professional Studies. Information on registering for this virtual training will be sent out soon. For those that are unable to attend, the training portion will be recorded and available online at a later date. Moving on to in-person meetings and the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. The changes to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act that allowed board members to not have to notice their meeting location or meet in an ADA accessible location expired on July 1st. Therefore, as of July 1, public meetings are subject to the traditional pre-COVID requirements for open meetings. DCA boards and bureaus should be prepared to conduct public meetings in compliance with the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. This includes whether a meeting is held at a single centralized location or at multiple teleconference locations. Each physical meeting location will need to be identified in meeting public notices and agendas. Board members must attend meetings in person at the notice meeting locations. All notice meeting locations, including locations where a single board member will be, must be ADA accessible, have an agenda posted, and be open to the public. The public will be permitted to attend meetings at any notice meeting location. Members of the public must be able to hear the meeting and participate in public comment from each location. The department has a Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act guide available and has provided your executive officer with a list of available meeting locations throughout the state. SB 544, which may allow for some meetings to be held without noticing the location of the board member, thus allowing remote virtual meetings, is still moving through the legislative process, and the department's Division of Legislative Affairs is working with stakeholders and providing updates to the boards and bureaus on the status of the bill. Next, I would like to share an update related to military spouses and domestic partners temporary licensure. Effective July 1, DCA boards and bureaus, unless otherwise exempt, are required to grant temporary licensure to the spouse or domestic partner of an active duty military member stationed in California if the spouse or domestic partner holds a license in another state with the same scope of practice as a profession in California for which they would like to practice. DCA's Office of Information Services and Communications Division have been working to support the implementation. All boards and bureaus were recently provided an outreach toolkit to help share the message of this new benefit to military spouses. In addition, DCA has also updated its military resources webpage to reflect this new benefit. Moving on to the Enlighten Enforcement Project. The department is continuing work on its Enlighten Enforcement Project that is being piloted by the Dental Board of California. The dental board has walked through their intake, complaint processing, citation, and investigation processes. One more walkthrough session will cover the discipline and probation processes. The goal is for staff to walk through the processes with the subject matter experts so improvements and efficiencies can be found for the dental board and that can be carried over to other boards. The project also aims to learn best practices between the boards and to standardize procedures for all boards and bureaus. The final benefit will be a template for policies and procedures related to enforcement processes for all the boards to utilize. Equally important is the data governance project. DCA is continuing its efforts to improve its reports regarding licensing and enforcement activities. The director recently led multiple work group meetings beginning in late April through early July with staff from each board and bureau to update the data metrics reported in DCA's annual report. The department's goal is to ensure consistency with report data in the annual report, DCA's data portal, and board and bureau sunset reports. Future meetings are expected in August and ongoing to help build new reports or modify existing ones to provide the new metrics for next year's DCA annual report. On July 17th, DCA held a meeting with all boards and bureaus to review guidance on how boards and bureaus can compile and report data to the department for inclusion in this year's upcoming annual report. This project will likely be completed at the beginning of 2024. Next, I'll share information related to press release translations. To further the department's efforts to reach the Californians we serve, DCA will request the boards and bureaus translate any press releases they issue into Spanish. California's top non-English language spoken is Spanish, and establishing a standard of translating releases into both English and Spanish will enhance the reach of information released. In addition, boards and bureaus are also encouraged to evaluate any additional languages outside of Spanish that may serve their audiences. For additional information on press release translations, please contact DCA Board and Bureau Relations. Next, I have a member onboarding reminder related to oath of office. Board members who have been appointed and reappointed cannot begin their service or perform any official functions without first taking the oath of office. Unless otherwise provided, the oath may be taken before any officer authorized to administer oaths. Board members should contact their executive officer to arrange taking the oath of office. Moving on to required board member training. There are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings for 2023. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory council members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members are required to take the 2-hour supervisory training. Board members with an assigned DCA email are required to complete the Information Security Awareness Fundamentals training. This training addresses everyone's role in protecting DCA data and information, is available online and required every year. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available in the department's learning management system. If board members need assistance in accessing the learning management system, please reach out to DCA Board and Bureau Relations, or if available, your board member liaison. Moving on to an update for 2023-2024 out-of-state travel. The Attorney General recently issued a press release adding 3 new states to California's restricted travel list with staggered effective dates in calendar year 2023 as follows. Wyoming, travel is restricted effective July 14th. Missouri, travel restricted effective August 28th. Nebraska, travel restricted effective October 1. If you have questions related to out-of-state travel, please reach out to your executive officer. And finally, I would like to provide a board member orientation training reminder, also referred to as BMOT. Board members must complete BMOT within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. On October 10th, BMOT will be offered virtually. This will be the last training offered in 2023 calendar year. Members can register for this training via the learning management system. Thank you again for this opportunity to present the DCA update today. And at this time, I will hand it back to Chair Raggio and welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you for that very detailed report. Much appreciated. I would like to open up our board discussion of Judy's report. Okay, hearing no comments, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are open for public comment on the DCA update, agenda item 5. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. Everyone may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants in order to request time for comment. There will be a 3-minute time limit with a 30-second warning. We're going to wait just a few seconds, and then we're going to move on to check our in-person locations. Seeing no request online, can we check our in-person locations, please?
Absolutely. Dr. White, are there any public comments at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Dominguez or Ms. Chang, are there any public comments at the Galeras Family Education Center?
Not.
Dr. Raggio, are there any public comments at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There are not.
Mr. Dan Duran, are there any public comments at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There are not.
Dr. Valdez, are there any public comments at the Stanford University location?
No, there's not.
There are no public comments at any of the physical locations, and that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. And thanks again, Judy, for your very detailed and important report.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 6, the board chair's report. If I can have you turn to tab number 6 in your board book. I want to point out that the next board meeting will be in person, November 30th, December 1st in Sacramento at the DCA headquarters, or headquarters 2 building, it says, 1747 North Market Boulevard in Sacramento. Also, I was wondering if I could ask Ms. Dominguez if she could provide an update on the Enforcement Ad Hoc Committee meeting.
Ad hoc committee met yesterday, Thursday, August 24th, in the afternoon from approximately 1:30 to 5 p.m. During that meeting, we reviewed and revised minimum and maximum penalties for violations of the Practice Act by violation type. That ends my report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Let me just reiterate or provide an update on the Audiology Practice Committee meeting earlier today. You'll recall that this is the, sorry, let me get to the right page, the issue of discussion regarding the auditory licensing requirements related to supervised clinical, as stated in Title 16, CCR section 1399.152.2. We discussed the items that are going to be amended in the new regulatory language, we hope, that were already agreed to in the past. Dr. White made a suggestion, though, that the comment 300 clinical hours of or 300 hours of clinical experience in 3 different settings. So it's a little confusing because it doesn't say whether you needed 300 in each setting or 300 total. So we've agreed to change the language to read a total of 300 clinical hours over the 3 locations. So Ms. Lorenzo suggested regulatory language to initiate the rulemaking process, and a motion was made to accept the suggested language, which was then subsequently passed. All right, are there any board discussion on the item so far? Hearing none, I do want to point out to Mr. Dandaran that he has been appointed to the Hearing Aid Dispensers Practice Committee and the Hearing Aid Dispensing Committee. Mr. Dandaran, do you have any questions about those appointments?
Not at this time. I'm sure I will once I maybe spend a little time talking with Todd and Todd Borges and Karen Chang.
Yes, I'm sure that'd be very helpful, as well as the board staff, about the differentiation between those 2 committees. Can I ask I'm sorry, was there anything further you wanted to say?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are once again open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen to raise a hand. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand. Everyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to wait just a few seconds, and then we're going to check our in-person locations. Seeing no request for comments online, can we check our in-person locations, please?
Absolutely. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center?
There is not.
Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Silence of Daly City location?
There is not.
Mr. Dandaran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
No, there is not.
Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
No, there's not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any of the physical locations. Sorry. That concludes public comment on the item.
Okay, thank you.
This is John Dandran. I do want to say that the question was posed to me, do I understand the difference between the 2 boards that I am on? I believe I do, and maybe Dr. Raggio or Dr. White, you can weigh in. If I understand it correctly, the 1 board that I am on is for hearing aid dispensers, and the 2nd board is for dispensing audiologists. Is that correct?
Yes. Let me get to this. Mr. Sanchez, could you explain to Mr. Dandaran the difference between those 2 committees?
Yes, we have a legislatively mandated committee that was established for hearing aid dispensing, for hearing aid dispensing, and that's the overarching practice of dispensing hearing aids, which that can include not just hearing aid dispensers, but dispensing audiologists. So that's the legislatively mandated hearing aid dispensing committee. We also established a practice committee, which is similar to our practice committees with speech language pathology and audiology. And this is specifically for hearing aid dispensing licensee issues. So that's the difference between the 2.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we could move to agenda item 7, which is the executive officer report, unless a bio break would be necessary at this point. Anybody? Or should we move on?
think we
I
can.
guess we'll
tackle
move
this
on.
and
Okay.
I'm sorry, Sharice, say again.
I was gonna say, we can tackle this item and then go ahead and have a bio break after.
Okay. So I'd like to ask Mr. Sanchez to provide the executive officer report.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go through my report. We were waiting for some information, Sharice and I, so we were not able to get that to you until today. But I'll go over it. And I just wanted to talk about a few things, mostly address some of the concerns that you've heard about, that we've heard about with our licensing timeframes. Before I do that, though, I want to go through the normal report and just talk about our administrative update here. I'm sad to say that, we've had to deal with some vacancies. Vacancies are mostly beyond our control. We had a licensing analyst that had been with us for some time, Mr. Dustin Kramer, who was promoted to work for another board. He did good work for us. And when you have good staff, they're going to get recruited and they're going to, have these opportunities for promotion. So we are in the process of filling that vacancy. We've actually made that our top priority to fill these vacancies. And Sharice and I have spent hours in this conference room that I'm in right now interviewing prospective employees. Many of you work in civil service, so I know you understand how difficult it can be to fill a position. I was just having this conversation with Dr. White, and we go through that too. So there are many obstacles, many stages and steps that we have to go through, but we're confident that we're going to fill these positions. The other position that has become vacant is a position of Theo Ross. He's our licensing analyst. He's been with state government for many years and has been, a mainstay in our office, just a constant, someone who we have really grown to appreciate. During the pandemic, Mr. Ross was really helpful in keeping things moving. Amid the chaos and all the different changes, he made sure to come in and help us keep this office running and keep someone here physically. So we're grateful for his service to the board. He's done good work and we're sad to see him go, but at the same time, we're very happy for him. We look forward to filling behind this position. In addition to that, we have another position that we attained through the budget process. So we hope that in the next month to 2 months, we will be fully staffed in licensing. Of course, this could not come at a worse time for us because we're going through our business modernization and we're also going through a peak season. Let me just talk a little bit about our outreach because I like to keep the board apprised of some of the things that we do. We had a pretty light outreach load this quarter. We've been focused mostly on, our business modernization, but we did have an opportunity to talk to the representatives from CASHA, their board chair, Marcella Cardoza McCullum, and their lobbyist, Andrea Ball and Laura Wasco. And what we've done is we've both opened up these channels where we communicate not just about legislative issues, but about the issues of their membership. And we occasionally do this with the various professions that we oversee. In this case, we wanted to answer some of their questions. Their questions were mostly related to licensing delays and licensing processes and, why things are taking so long. And we had a great discussion, and we plan on keeping these discussions open to keep them apprised, since that's our largest membership of what the board is doing and where we're going with our licensing processes. I have in your materials a fund condition, and the fund condition is just a snapshot in time of our budget with how much money has come in through revenue and how much we have expended this past year and how much we plan on expending. At the very bottom of this fund condition, there's a fund balance and it shows you months in reserve. The months in reserve are a measuring point for state government and the Department of Finance to kind of measure how healthy the board is. If we had no money coming in, how long could we go on operating? So typically a board of our size, you want to have anywhere from 2 to 4 months of months in reserve. So as you can see, we have a fairly healthy fund at this point. Next on my report is our regulations. We're going to have a report later on. Maria Lorenzo is going to discuss regulations, and she gives us a little status update of where we are on our rulemaking files. The one thing that you'll notice if you're paying attention to this chart, that some of these rulemaking files are coming off of the chart and some new ones are coming on. That's actually, we're making progress. We're actually moving forward quite well with our rulemaking files. So I look forward to hearing more on that report later on in this meeting. Now, I want to talk about licensing, and I just want to address some of the concerns that we are hearing about. First off, I want to thank the board for the support that you've given us, because some of the accomplishments that we are seeing and some of the progress that we're making, we could not have made it without the support of the board, especially the board leadership, Dr. Raja, who's been behind us 100%. Now, right now, I know that things don't look so good. We understand the concerns that we are hearing from the public, and we understand and appreciate the comments that are coming in. I've been working for this board for several years now, and I know the impact that it has when someone isn't licensed on time. We have all been in a situation here at the board office where we have helped in whatever way we can to get someone licensed. We've talked to employers. We've done whatever we can. So I want to make that really clear that no one here at the board accepts delays as a norm. We don't want delays. We don't want people to have to wait for months to have to get an application processed. Like many of our licensees out there, we have licensees in our family, and we would not want this for them. So I just want to make that clear. I know that the board feels this way, and I want to talk a little bit about what we have done. So when I first came to the board, things looked a whole lot different. We were processing about 2,000 applications a year. Now, I think we are upwards, and I always need Sharice to remind me of what this number is, but I want to say it's about 4,200 a year. So almost twice as many applications are processed now. Our licensing population has also almost doubled in that time. So what we had to do was we had to look at our processes. And first thing we did is we did a process improvement, and we made major changes to how we process licenses and trying to prevent losing documents. The second thing that we did is we looked at our budget and our resources. As you recall, we had a fee increase so that we could have sufficient funding to increase our staff. When I first came to the board, we had 2 staff members that handled all of licensing. This year, as of July 1, we have 5. So that's a significant amount. For the number of applications that we process, probably not the way I would start. I would probably have many more than that. But considering the limitations of government and the limitations of our budget, I think we've done pretty well increasing from 2 to 5. Having said all that, all of these things that we've done are only Band-Aid solutions, and we understand that. So we embarked years ago on looking at not just a process improvement or throwing work at our problems, because throwing work at our problems is only going to end up with the same problems every peak season, which we know that. So what we did is we set out to do a business modernization. Of course, board members, I know that you have all heard this, so bear with me. I want the public to understand what we're doing. So we set off to start a business modernization project, something that would allow us to use technology, to use at least 20th century technology, so that we could get people to go online and process their application and know the status of their applications, just like when you order something from someone online. I won't start naming companies, but you want a status check. You want to track what you ordered. We want our applicants to be able to track their application. And we have been successful at doing that. So that's where we are today. We're in the middle of a business modernization project. We call it Apply Simply. It has required all hands on deck. Our staff have done a great job. The staff member that left, the staff member that's retiring, our staff members that are here, they have put all of their work into this. I come by this conference room, and there were times where on a daily basis, they were just troubleshooting, trying to get this thing working. So we have worked hard to get this system up and running. We got it running in a relatively short time. So we've had great success in embarking on this. But where are we today? We're at a point of where we have to maintain this. We have to troubleshoot this. There are going to be problems anytime you have a project of this magnitude. This is my third project like this in state government, and I will say that this has gone by far the best of any project I've ever worked on like this. Having said that, we have issues where we're troubleshooting on a daily basis, while we're also trying to keep our heads above water with licensing timeframes. So if you look at the chart today where we are at about 12 weeks. So it's taking about almost 3 months to process most completed applications. Some will be done in a shorter amount of time, some will take longer, but that's where we are today. It's probably going to get somewhat worse before it gets better because we have vacancies to fill and we're going into another peak season now. But I am confident that once we weather this storm, we get our staff hired, we get them trained, and we have a plan for that, that we will see significant changes. We'll probably see them, probably after we get through this peak season, we're going to start to notice a big difference. My hope is that we will be sitting here next year and we won't be hearing about licensing backlogs or delays. So I wanted everyone to know where we're going, where we are today. I asked and see, oh, it's taking about 12 weeks for me to apply. That's meant so that they can have an expectation. Typically what happens is we're getting calls right before that 12-week expires and people want to know the status. We're also getting calls from people that just want to know the status as soon as they apply. So we ask that they try to use the system, try to keep updated with the emails and the information that we're sending out. Before I go on to any other items on my report, I wanted to see if any of our board members have questions on our licensing timeframes or on our project.
This is Marcia. I have a question. Just curious how long it takes to train a new analyst for licenses.
I would suggest that usually anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get them to proficient to do most licensing. We have quite complicated licensing applications for some of our license types. I won't name names. So some are more difficult than others, and they require a lot of training just to do the process parts, and then learning the law books and all the different variations and details within that process. So usually within the first 3 to 6 months, they're trained and up and running. Within the first year, they start to get the full understanding of how all these processes work together, and they're kind of more independent and proficient at that point. Obviously, with what we got right now, we have 2 people that are here working. The one is leaving after next week. At this point, I am also helping process licensing applications myself. So there's a lot of people working on this. We're trying to utilize any and all staff that we can to do whatever parts of the process to help out. But it will take a little bit of time. Hopefully, the person we're hiring in the next weeks and month to fill one of the positions will be a fast learner due to her previous experience at previous boards.
And that also doesn't mean that someone's not productive until the 6 months, because their training is phased in. So there's always something that they're doing that's helping us with the processes. And we have two staff that are only focused on processing certain types of applications, but we have other staff that work in the licensing area. And as Sharice mentioned, other people that are helping out with the application processes right now. Are there any other questions from any of our board members?
I have a question. It has to do with the DCA just bringing on the military spouses from out of state and allowing them to get their temp license in state. Is there a fast track for them, or they're still going through the same process if it is our profession?
By law, the board expedites military spouse, and asylee, refugee, and special visa holders. That is a legal requirement, so we expedite those as quickly as possible. Sometimes those applications will take longer because they do a hard card fingerprint instead of live scan once they're in California, and the Department of Justice has delays and we can't expedite that part of the process. But everything else is expedited for those applicants that are military veterans, military spouse, and asylee, refugee, and special visa holders by law.
Thank you.
I would clarify, military spouse, they have to be licensed in another state in the same profession. So sometimes people will end up being in the difficulty where they are a military spouse, but they don't hold a license in another state, so they don't qualify for expediting. But that's just the way the law is written, and we follow the laws and regulations. So.
If there are no other questions on licensing, I'll move on with my report. Included in the report are statistics from our most recent hearing aid dispensing practical examination. I've also included an enforcement report, so we have statistics on licenses issued, our licensing population. Currently, in last year, we processed about 4,000 applications. The previous year, we were at about 4,300. So we're processing roughly about 4,000 applications a year, and our total licensing population is close to 40,000. I also include in your report the last 12 months of formal discipline, so that you can see this is public information that we put on our website. And with this, I'll leave it open to any questions board members might have for me or staff.
Does the board have any questions or comments about Paul's report? Seems like the fail rate under hearing aid dispensers for the July 2023 is a high number. Is that true, or is that typical? Like a 40% fail rate.
It was a little bit higher this last time. We do see a number of candidates making mistakes that are safety issues, and so that can sometimes affect our failure rate. That is very true of the last examination.
Okay. Any other board discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen to raise a hand. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. And our first request comes from Andrea Ball. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
And good morning. This is Andrea Ball, legislative advocate for the California Speech Hearing Language Association. I wanted to thank the board's executive officer and deputy for meeting with CASHA's board chair, as Mr. Sanchez noted. We do want to start, CASHA does want to start making these regular conversations part of our ongoing relationship with the board. And it was really helpful because, as you can imagine, CASHA does get inquiries, comments, questions about things like the licensing processing time from people across the state and even out of the state. And so having this communication to be able to gather information, accurately respond to these inquiries is very helpful. And as you know, as Mr. Sanchez noted, and I know you all know, and especially the speech language pathologists on the board, the shortage is really critical ever since the pandemic, with more and more young people, children coming back to school in person, needing speech language therapy. It's really important that we have enough professionals able to help these children and youth, as well as adults. So thank you very much. Please let us know if there's anything else we can do to help you speed up the process. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our only request for comment at the moment. Shall we check our in-person locations?
Absolutely. Dr. White, are there any public comments at the board office?
There are not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, are there any public comments at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
Not.
Dr. Raggio, are there any public comments at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There are not.
Mr. Dan Duran, are there any public comments at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There are none.
Dr. Valdez, are there any public comments at the Stanford University location?
There are not.
There are no public comments at any of the physical locations, and that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Paul, for the detailed report.
You're welcome.
Now, time to take a 15-minute recess.
David, could you take over? I can never figure out how to type into that little when we return button.
I've got it.
Thank you.
Moderator, are you there?
I am here.
I'd like to resume the meeting.
We are ready to resume when you are.
Okay, I'd like to resume our board meeting. Mr. Knotes, is it necessary to take roll again at this point?
It is, Madam Chair.
Okay, Therese, can I ask you to call roll?
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio.
Here.
And your location?
I'm sorry, 333 Gellert Boulevard, Suite 118, Daly City, California, and there are no members of the public here.
Thank you. Ms. Chang?
And my address is Galeras Family Education Center, 427 West Carroll Avenue, Room 2, Glendora, California, 91741. And member Gilda Dominguez is here with me.
Mr. Dan Duran?
John Dan Durand, excuse me. I am at Simi Valley Public Library, 2969 Chapel Canyon Road, Simi Valley, and there's no public members here.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez, just that you're here? Dr. Valdez? I'll come back to you, Dr. Valdez. Dr. White?
Amy White at the board office, 1601 Response Road, Suite 260, Sacramento, California, here with board staff.
And Dr. Valdez. We'll just wait a few moments until we get confirmation from Dr. Valdez of his location. We're just going to mute ourselves for a minute so that we can call him to check on that there might be a microphone or audio issue. Dr. Valdez, were we able to reestablish connection?
Yes.
Wonderful. Can you verify that you're here and if there's any members of the public at your location and also identify your location address?
I'm here, and I'm the only person. I'm at Stanford University, 291 Campus Drive, Hallway Building, room 315.
Thank you, Dr. Valdez.
Okay. I'd like to move on to agenda item number 8, legislative report, update, review, and possible action on possible legislation. I'd like to turn the discussion over to Maria Lorenzo and Sharice Burns to provide the legislative report. And I believe that Ms. Lorenzo is going to be discussing items A and B before board discussion of those items.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. This is Maria Lorenzo, Legislation and Regulation Analyst. The first item on the report is the legislative calendar and deadlines. I do want to remind that this is the first year of a 2-year session, so the legislature will be in session until September 14th, and then they'll go into a recess. And so you'll see the deadlines that they must meet for bills to get for bills to be on the governor's desk. The next item is board sponsor legislation. SB 887 is currently or was heard on August 16th in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. Currently, it is on the Assembly floor on third reading. This bill will make numerous technical and clarifying changes to various Practice Act. Specifically, the bill would amend the Board's Practice Act to replace gendered pronouns with gender-neutral pronouns or nouns. The board took a support position on this item.
Okay, thank you. Is there any board discussion on those first two items? Hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are now taking public comment on agenda item 8. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand, or you may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to wait just a few seconds, and then we're going to check on our physical locations. Seeing no request online, shall we check on our physical locations?
We can. David, I noticed that Andrea's hand is up. Maybe it never went back down, or?
Let's refresh. Thank you so much. Andrea Ball, hold on. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Hello again, Andrea Ball here on behalf of the California Speech Language Hearing Association. I'm commenting on item number 8, C Roman numeral 4, SB 612 by Senator Ochoa Bogue, which is sponsored by CASHA, to request you move to a full support position. The bill clarifies and makes technical correction to the implementation of last year's SB 1453, specifically the revisions to the process for the verifications. I think the bill did take the technical or the amendment that the board was requesting. The last amendment is June 28th. And you'll probably hear from the report, the bill is now out of the Assembly onto the Senate, and we would value your support. We have appreciated the input and the time spent on the bill from your staff and from some of the individual board members who've met with us and other stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's take one last look around. I think we're ready to move on to our physical locations.
Dr. White, are there any public comments at the board office?
There are not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, are there any public comments at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
There's not.
Dr. Raggio, are there any public comments at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There are not.
Mr. Dan Duran, are there any public comments at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
No, they're not.
Dr. Valdez, are there any public comments at the Stanford University location?
No, there are not.
Thank you. There are no public comments at any of the physical locations, and that concludes public comment for agenda item 8A and B. And now Maria can move on to item C.
Thank you, Cherise. So the next item is bills with active position. We have AB 381. This bill failed to meet the House of Origin deadlines. It is currently in the Assembly Appropriation Committee and may be acted upon in January 2024. This bill would delete provisions specifying that services as an occupational therapist or physical therapist are not health services, and authorize the Commission on Teacher Credentialing to issue health services credential to occupational therapists or physical therapists. Current law specifies that services as an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, or an audiometrist are not health services for the purpose of a health service credential. The board took a neutral if amended position. The second item with active position is SB 372. This bill was heard on August 13th in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. It is currently on the Assembly floor, third reading. This bill would require a board to update a licensee's or registrant's license and any references to their name or gender display on the internet if the board receives from the licensee or registrant government issued documentation demonstrating that their legal name or gender has been changed. This bill would require the board to post an online statement and direct the public to contact the board for more information if the licensee or registrant has enforcement records online referencing their former name or gender, or if a search on the online license verification system is performed using a licensee's or registrant's former name. The board took an opposed unless amended position.
We would note that the author's office has taken many amendments since we took the opposed unless amended position. And under the current revised SB 372 language, the board could entertain a support position on what has been recommended. The Department of Consumer Affairs Legislative Office has helped coordinate a lot of DCA boards and bureaus, and also work with the information technology divisions in order to provide input to the author. I think this is now a workable bill. This is something that we could work with and successfully implement. And so I don't think there's any reason to keep an oppose or oppose unless amended position any longer.
Can I ask what the amendments were that changed your mind?
They removed the telephone number provision. They also made it so that it will no longer show the dead name, as it's called, online. It'll just ask them to call the board. And that way the board can provide any legally required information under the Open Records Act. Sorry, I wanted to say Open Meetings Act. I'm like, nope, wrong thing. Open Records Act. So it would allow us to go ahead and stop using the dead name on our online license search, but also provide information to the public as needed and without making any administratively burdensome processes that the board wouldn't be able to manage, like that separate telephone line that they can call to get information. So I think it's a more streamlined bill. It makes a lot more sense, and DCA's information technology division is able to help with implementing this solution for the board. And I think that meets all the criteria for the board had wanted previously. So and also, if there is discipline on the person's record, it will have a statement saying as such, and that they can contact the board. So the public will still have access to the disciplinary documents, but it'll be provided separately.
Okay, is there any other board discussion on the bills that are that we are taking an active position on? Hearing none, I presume we need a motion to change our board position to support. Is that the case?
If that is what the board would like to entertain.
Not hearing any dissent, I would entertain a motion to change our
the
board
position to support for SB 372.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Dr. Valdez? Sorry, I missed who that was.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on the motion for Senate Bill 372. If you would like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. You may also, dial-in users may dial *3 to raise a hand. And you may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to wait a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment.
I believe they can also comment on AB 381.
Hey, Larry.
Does the motion include AB 381?
No. There's no change to the position of 381.
There isn't, but is there any public comment on this sector of the board report?
At the moment, there are no requests for comments from online. Should we check our physical locations?
Yes. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center?
Not.
Thank you. Dr. Raju, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There's not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There's not.
And Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
There's not.
Thank you. There are no public comments at any of the public locations. And that would conclude public comment on AB 381 and SB 372 and the motion to change position from oppose unless amended to support on SB 372.
Okay, I'd like to have Sharice call the vote for that motion.
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Mr. Dan Duran? Ms. Dominguez?
Aye.
Dr. Valdez?
Aye.
Dr. White?
Aye.
The motion carried.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move ahead to have Ms. Lorenzo and Ms. Burns talk about the next item, SB 544.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. This bill was on the assembly floor. It was amended and re-referred to the Appropriations Committee. This bill would remove indefinitely the teleconference requirements that a state board posts agendas at all teleconference locations, that each teleconference location be identified in the notice and agenda of the meeting or proceeding, and that each teleconference location be accessible to the public. The bill would require a state body to provide a means by which the public may remotely hear, observe, or attend the meeting, and one physical address where a member of the state body or staff will be physically present. The bill would require members of a state body who attend a meeting remotely to disclose any individual 18 years of age or older present with the member and the general nature of the relationships. The current law requires that a state body to post agendas at all teleconference locations, that each teleconference location be identified in the notice and agenda of the meeting or proceeding, and that each teleconference location be accessible to the public, that the agenda provide an opportunity for members of the public to address the state body directly at each teleconference location, and that at least one member of the state body be physically present at the locations specified in the notice of the meeting. The board took a support position.
Currently, the board is not recommending any change to the position on SB. In regards to remote participation and teleconferencing. However, it does provide a good amount of flexibility compared to what we are doing today. So in the future, it would allow at least half of the board meetings to have remote meetings where you do not have to agendize the location of each of the board members. And that way we do not have to take public comment at each and every public location where there may not be any public members. But we would, of course, have a one physical location where members of the public can come and attend, and a member of the board or staff, as currently written, would have to be there. There could be amendments along the way. There is quite a bit of discussion and vigorous debate about SB 544 at the legislature, so we'll continue to monitor. But at this moment in time, the position of support is still applicable with the provisions of the bill.
Is there any further board discussion on this bill?
Madam Chair, minor correction. The bill originally uh, made those changes indefinitely, but the new amendments to the bill sunset those additional privileges on January 1st, 2026. I just wanted to correct that.
Yes, apologies. They have a sunset provision to see how it's working and then come back, and if it's not working, to revise. Kind of like
Okay.
our boards, right? Get a review every few years.
Any further board discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to accept the board's support position on this bill.
Dr. Raju, we already have a support position, so since we're not changing it, I don't believe we need to take a vote, but maybe Michael can opine.
No, we have a support position now, so there's no motion needed at this stage.
Okay. That's not what my notes say.
Sorry.
Can I ask for public comment on this bill?
We are now accepting public comment on SB 544. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users, dial *3. You may also type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. I see that we have a request for comment for SB 612, and I believe we'll be getting to that next. In the meantime, let's look one more time for comments on 544. Seeing no request online, shall we ask about our physical locations?
Absolutely. Dr. White, are there any public comments at the board office?
There are not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, are there any public comments at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
Not.
Dr. Raggio, are there any public comments at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There are not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
They're not.
And Dr. Valdez, are there any public comments at the Stanford University location?
There are not.
Thank you. There are no public comments at any of the physical locations. And the public comment is done for that item.
Chair Raggio, I was
Yes.
just going to suggest that we can, unless we have a motion which has its own public comment period, we can do public comment on the full ledge report at the end rather than taking one bill at a time. We have a pretty large number of bills, at least in section 8D.
Okay. Let's move on to item 4, SB 612. Ms. Lorenzo and Ms. Burns.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. This bill is on, or was on the Assembly floor, third reading. It's currently in the Senate for concurrence on the Assembly amendments. This bill would specify that a licensed speech-language pathologist who obtain a written verification before January 1st, 2023 meets the requirement to perform a fees procedure. Current laws specify that a licensed speech-language pathology who obtain a license before January 1st, 2023 meets the requirements to perform a fees procedure. The board took a support if amended position.
We are recommending to move to a full support as our technical amendments were addressed, and the board is now supportive of the bill as written.
Okay, is there any board discussion on this bill? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to support this bill, not as amended, but as written.
This is Dr. White. I'll make a motion to support the bill as written for SB 612.
That was Ms. Dominguez
With a second, Ms. Dominguez?
with the second.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are now open for public comment on the motion for Senate Bill 612. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand. You may also type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And our first request for comment comes from Andrea Ball. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning.
Okay, I'll be brief. Thank you, Andrea Ball, on behalf of Kasha, again, referencing my earlier comments to support, request you move to a full support positions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And looking around, that was our only request for comment at the moment. Shall we check our physical locations?
We shall. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center location? I'll come back to you. Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There is not.
Mr. Dan Durand, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There's not.
Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
There is not. Can you hear me?
Thank you. We can now. We couldn't hear you earlier. There is no public comment at any of the physical locations, and that concludes public comment for SB 612. Back to you, Dr. Raggio.
Okay, if there's no further board discussion, I'd like to call the vote on the motion that's on the table.
Dr. Raggio.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
Mr. Dan Durand.
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez.
Aye.
Dr. Valdez.
Aye.
Dr. White.
Aye.
Motion carries to move to a support position. At this time, we're going to pull up a bill to talk about a position. It got mistakenly put in the watch section. So I'm going to ask the moderator to move ahead to the slide that has SB 635 on it, please.
I need to ask a question of Mr. Knotes first. If there is a bill that requires action, a vote, a motion and second, should I attempt to get public comment for those and not for the ones that don't require action of some sort?
Yes,
Rather than
that's
collective.
correct. Well, we always take public comment on any motion that's made, regardless of where we are in the agenda. But if there's no action being taken, again, we can wait until the end of the report to take public comment on the whole report.
Okay, thank you.
So SB 635 was amended while the board, in between the board meeting in April and now. And it now covers hearing aids and healthcare coverage. It would require healthcare service plan contracts and health insurance policies issued, amended, or renewed on or after January 1, 2025 to include coverage for hearing aids for enrollees and insureds under 21 years of age, if medically necessary. The bill would limit the maximum required coverage amount to $3,000 per individual hearing aid and define the coverage for hearing aids to include an initial assessment, fittings, adjustments, and maintenance of the hearing aid and new hearing aids at least every 4 years, or if alterations to existing hearing aids cannot meet the needs of the enrollee or insured, or if the existing one is no longer working. The board used the Administrative Procedure Manual, which allows for the board chair and vice chair to be consulted to take a support position. The board leadership went ahead and consulted with the board chair and vice chair and got their approval of this so that they could support the bill at a hearing. And we have expressed that support. We would like the board to be notified of that support and hear any comments regarding the bill from you, or if there's any change in a position that would be recommended outside of support.
Is there any board discussion?
Does this bill have anything to do in relationship to Medi-Cal or the Medi-Cal programs that are under managed care? Or is this for all insurance companies?
I believe it is for both. They put it in both provisions, but I'm not sure if it impacts Medi-Cal specifically. But I would understand that most HMOs would have to follow under the healthcare service plan contract. But I would have to double check on that.
This would change the reimbursement. Sorry.
It's Medicare, different from Medicare.
Medi-Cal already provides hearing aid coverage for children. So I believe this is aimed at more private insurance. Excuse me. Can I ask if there's any opposition to this? Would you know if there's any opposition to this bill?
The last time I checked, there was not. Let me verify right now. Up the analyses to check right now, just in case anyone's added on. I don't currently see any opposition to the bill in either of the analyses. Very long list of supports, but no opposition on any of the analyses for the last two with these provisions within the bill.
That's a little surprising.
According to some of the sponsors of the bill, they've done a lot of work behind the scenes to get a lot of the details hammered out with the different insurance areas so that they could get support for this.
Great. Is there any other board discussion? Hearing none, I presume that we're in support, so we don't need a motion, but I would like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise a hand. Everyone may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. People will be given a 3-minute time limit with a 30-second warning. Let's take a quick peek around to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request online, shall we check our physical locations?
Yes. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
It's not.
Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
No, there isn't.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There's none.
Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
No, there's not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any physical locations, and that concludes public comment on SB 635.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go back a page or two to look at bills that were or under a recommended watch status. Ms. Lorenzo and Ms. Burns.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. I won't go into each one of them, but we do have a list of watch bills that we're just keeping track of. Each one has their status as well as a summary of any of each of the bills, the changes. If there are any questions or comments, you're more than welcome to provide them to us.
Is there any board discussion on the watch status item from the board? Hearing none, can I ask the moderator to open for public comment?
We are now accepting public comment on the watch items. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial in users, dial *3 to raise a hand. Everyone may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen to signal your intentions for comment. People will be given a 3-minute time limit with a 30-second warning. And looking around, I see no requests for comments online. Should we check our physical locations?
Absolutely. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
There is not.
Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There is not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There is not.
Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
There's not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any physical locations, and that wraps up public comment for the watch bill.
Okay, I would like to complete legislation by discussing item number 9, and then I'd like to propose that we break for a 30-minute lunch. Item number 9 is legislative items for future meetings. The board may discuss other items of legislation in sufficient detail to determine whether such items should be on a future board meeting agenda or whether to hold a special meeting of the board to discuss such items pursuant to Government Code Section 11125.4. So are there any legislative items for future meetings?
Board staff do not have any legislative items for future meetings to bring.
Is there any board discussion? Any future items you'd like to bring up? Hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on future legislative items. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the center of your screen at the bottom. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise a hand. Everyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take a quick look around to see if we have a request for comment online, and then we're going to check our physical locations. Seeing no request online, shall we check our physical locations now?
Absolutely. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
It's not.
Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There is not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There is not.
And Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
There is not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any physical location on agenda item 9.
Okay, thank you. Before we go on to our next agenda items, I would like to ask that we take a 30-minute lunch break at this point. So if we can go into recess, moderator, I appreciate the sign you can put up.
Coming right up.
Reconvene at 1:15.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, I'd like to reconvene the meeting of the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology and Hearing Aid Dispensers Board today, August 25th. It is about 1:18, and I would like to start by calling the roll. If Sharice would help us with that.
Absolutely. And if everyone can state their location and if there's any members of the public present afterwards, just like we've done at the beginning. So Dr. Raggio.
My name is Marcia Raggio. I'm located at 333 Gillard Boulevard, Suite 118, Daly City, California, and I do not have any members of the public with me.
Ms. Chang.
Hi, this is Karen Chang. I'm a public board member, and I'm located at Galeras Family Education Center, 427 West Carroll Avenue, Room 2, Glendora, California, 91741. And I have member Hilda Dominguez with me.
Mr. John Vanderan. Apologies.
This is the moderator. I just found him and brought him up into the panel.
There we go. This is John Dandrand. I'm at 2969. I'm at Simi Valley Library at 2969 Tapo Canyon Boulevard in Simi Valley, and I do not have any public members.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez.
Here.
Dr. Valdez.
Hi, this is Tulio Valdez. I am at Stanford University, 291 Campus Drive, Alway Building, room 315.
Thank you. And Dr. White.
Amy White at the board office, 1601 Response Road, Suite 260 in Sacramento, and here with other board staff.
We have a quorum and are ready to begin with agenda item 10.
Okay, I'd like to ask Ms. Lorenzo to give us the regulatory report, item number 10 on the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. The first item on the regulatory report is the SLIPA program and academic requirements. The board approved the regulatory language on August 12, 2022. This proposal was submitted to the Office of Administrative Law for review on June 8th, 2023, and it was approved on July 18th, 2023. And these regulations will become effective on October 1st, 2023. This proposed change will specify qualifications for SLIPA training program directors, increase the number of the required field work experience from 70 hours to 100, and modify the full-time work experience for out-of-state SLIPA applicants.
Gosh, it's so rare to see all the yellow boxes filled.
Exciting, right?
It is. Okay, let me just clarify something that we're going to do today. There are a couple of items that are going to require board review and approval. shall we go through those one by one now, and we'll come back to that in terms of the board activity on them? Maria, how would you like to do it?
Either way, just direct me and I'll just follow along.
Okay, why don't we just go through the items, and then we'll come back to those that require a board review and approval, if that's okay with Mr. Knutz.
Forgive me, trying to get to the mute key there. Yes, I think that's fine if we run through the entire report. I would just suggest taking public comment at the end then, and then do the two items that will require motions.
Okay.
All right. So the next item is SLIPA supervision requirements. This is in the finalizing regulatory package phase and will require board review and approval. And we do have materials for that. Item C is the continuing education requirements for hearing aid dispensers. Board approved revisions to the regulatory language on April 27, 2023. The documents completed the initial review process on July 13th and was noticed July 28th for public comment. The 45-day public comment period will end on September 12, 2023. The proposed regulatory change will increase the number of hours that can be obtained in indirect client care or related courses, permit other opportunities to fulfill continuing education requirements, and clarify current regulations by making the requirements consistent with board audit process and existing professional learning requirements that this board has for the practices of speech language and pathology and audiology. The next item is D, which is the SOP and audiologist continue professional development requirements. The board approved revisions to the regulatory language on April 27th, 2023. Board staff submitted the regulatory documents for DCA review on July 7th, and it's currently with the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency as of July 25th. The proposed regulatory change will clarify definition to reflect advancements made to continuing education courses delivered online, increase the number of self-study hours to half of the total required hours, and clarify current regulations by making them consistent with the board's audit process and professional learning for similar license type and course content. The next item is E, which is the advertising for hearing aid dispensing. The board approved revisions to regulatory language on April 27th, 2023. Board staff submitted regulatory documents for DCA review on August 15th, and it's currently with the executive office. The proposed regulatory changes will clarify that anyone licensed to dispense hearing aids can advertise the fitting and selling of hearing aids in accordance with Business and Profession Codes Section 651 and California Codes of Regulations Section 1399.127. Information required in advertisements, prohibited advertisements, and national advertisements disseminated in California. Next item is item F, proposed changes to fingerprinting requirements. The board approved regulatory languages on May 13th, 2022. Board staff have submitted regulatory documents for DCA's review on August 31st, 2022, and we are still working with the DCA Budgets Office to develop the economic and fiscal impact statement. This proposed change will require licensees who are initially licensed prior to January 1st, 1999, or for whom an electronic fingerprint record does not exist to be fingerprinted as a condition of renewal. The next item is item G, which is examination requirements for hearing aid dispensers and dispensing audiologists. The board approved language on May 13th, 2022. Board staff are preparing regulatory documents for DCA review, and we are currently working with budgets to develop the economic and fiscal impact statement. The proposed regulatory change will update the practical exam process, describe the written examination process, update the practical examination appeal process, and specify the requiring hearing aid examination for dispensing audiologists to only be the written examination. Next item is H, which is the proposed changes to approved institutions. This proposal is in the preparing regulatory package phase and will require board review and approval. And we do have materials for that. And then the last item is proposed changes to hearing aid dispensers, temporary license supervision. This proposal is in the preparing regulatory package phase and requires review and approval. And we do have this material as hand carry, which Charisse will display online, and it's also online on our website. And that is the report.
Okay, so a number of these packages require further discussion, starting with item B. B as in boy, B. Do you want to say something further about it, Maria?
We could start the discussion on item B, if that's what you're asking.
Yes.
Okay, so item B is proposed changes to the SLIPA supervision requirements, which will permit telesupervision as direct supervision for SLIPAs, require a higher level of supervision for the first 90 days following the SLIPA's initial licensure, require both a minimum level experience and professional development training and supervision before a SLP can supervise, permit supervision of 3 full-time equivalent support personnel, not to exceed 6, and incorporate by reference the revised supervision form and revise the notice of termination. So board staff did issue the 15-day notice on May 10th, which completed on May 25th. We received 39 comments during that period. 7 were in support, 7 expressed objection or recommended changes, and 25 were not related to the modifications made to the proposed regulations. Board staff did identify an error with the amendment, so we did have to do another 15-day notice on June 14th, 2023, which ended June 29th, 2023. And this was to change the amendments to the minimum level of experience required. We originally had it at the end of the sentence and it needed to be a little further in the sentence, but and so the current text that we're presenting has those changes. During that comment period, we received 8 written comments, 2 were in support and 6 were not related to the modifications made to text. Board staff do not recommend any additional changes. And so in accordance with the Administrative Procedure Act, we do have written comment or board responses for board review and approval for all the comments that were received in all the comment periods that were made for this proposed changes. As also along with the materials are all the comments we received for each of the different comment period. And yeah, with that, I can answer any questions.
Is there any board discussion on 10B? Hearing none, if I can draw your attention to page 14 of 14 in the handouts. The board is asking that the board staff is asking that the board review and discuss this item if we wish to determine whether or not to approve the board's responses to comments as currently drafted or propose changes to the board's responses, as well as direct the board staff to prepare the necessary documents to complete the rulemaking file. Can anybody have a comment on that? Hearing none, there is a suggested motion also on page 14 of 14. If somebody would like to make that motion.
This is Dr. White. I'll read that language. Move to approve the proposed board responses to comments and direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process, including the filing of the final rulemaking package with the Office of Administrative Law, authorize the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations before completing the rulemaking process, and adopt the proposed regulations at Title 16 CCR sections 1399.170, 1399.170.2, and 1399.170.15 through 1399.170.18 as noticed.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. Everyone may also type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. And it looks like our first request comes from call-in user number 3. Hold on just a second. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You may need to dial *6 in order to unmute.
Hi there, this is Christina Zykes, speech pathologist from American River College. And I just had a question about item B that you were discussing. I know on 1399.170 definitions that direct supervision now includes synchronous audiovisual observation. However, in the proposed verbiage on B4, it says direct supervision, but it does not include synchronous, the verbiage that was included in the original definition. So I didn't know if that was overlooked or if it needed to be included.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we're going to hear from Christina Zajic. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Or David, that's actually the same person.
Understood. That's our only request for public comment online. Shall we? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Would you like Maria to answer the question before we move to the physical locations?
Yes, please.
The definition for direct supervision means on-site observation and guidance, or synchronous audio-visual observation and guidance. And the requirement is that for the first 90 days, 20% of the week per week for a SLPA initial licensure, that direct supervision be on-site observation and guidance.
So essentially, during those first 90 days, the telesupervision option is off the docket, but after that, direct supervision can include the audio-visual or telesupervision.
And it's the first 90 days following initial licensure, not first 90 days of work if they've been licensed for a while.
Okay, hopefully that's a satisfactory answer.
We have thank you written in the comments.
No other public comment?
No other request for public comment online. Shall we check the physical locations?
Absolutely. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang and Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center?
There's not.
Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There's not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There is not.
And Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
There is not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any of the physical locations.
Okay, if there's no further board discussion, I'd like to call the vote on this.
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio?
Aye.
Ms. Chang?
Aye.
Mr. Dan Duran?
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez?
Aye.
Dr. Valdez?
Aye.
Dr. White?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Shall we move to, Maria, do you want to discuss a little further item number 10H?
Yes, 10H is proposed changes to approved institutions. Business and Profession Code Section 2532.25 requires applicants for an audiology license to have a doctorate in audiology from an educational institution approved by the board. The board specifies the standards for educational institutions in California Code of Regulations, Section 1399.152. In July 2017, the board received a letter from the Accreditation Commission for Audiology Education requesting the board to verify if they meet requirement to be an accrediting body for programs where individuals can complete their academic and clinical requirements for audiology license. The board met and discussed the letter at its October 2017 meeting and expressed concerns about the potential limitations to the board's ability to review and or approve other accrediting bodies, and delegated board staff to amend section 1399.152. At its February 2018 meeting, the board approved proposed language, but due to limited staff resource and the COVID pandemic, the package has been delayed. And so this is proposed changes to what was already adopted by the board. Just a lot of clarifying information, changing gender pronouns, and updating names, outdated names, or including, for example, in B2, the accrediting body had changed name after they merged. And so, yeah, and I believe, so the only difference from if you see attachment A is the proposed language that the board's going to adopt. Attachment B is the proposed language that the board had adopted. And we did review as board staff C, D, and E, that it just, originally the board wanted to remove it, but as we were discussing it, when it comes to like our foreign applicants, and as well as accreditation programs that are in candidacy period of accreditation, we felt that it still needed to be there for future programs as they develop and are in that process of accreditation. And so in the proposed changes, you'll see that we just cleaned up the language to address the concerns that the board had expressed previously, to provide the board staff with the authority to approve programs under these certain conditions. And also, as part of the materials, I've put a comparison of what's the accrediting bodies, what schools. The first one is our current regulations as it compares to the requirements of the two audiology accrediting program bodies, as well as there's two different educational institutions accreditation bodies, and higher, yeah, it's a higher level of recognized, to show the difference of what accrediting bodies fall in which, either if they're the Department of Education or the Council of Higher Education, for review.
Okay, so it's my understanding that that ASHA is accredited by the Department of Education, and AAA, or the American Academy of Audiology, is accredited by the Council on Higher Education Accreditation. That's just a personal decision on which accrediting body they chose to work with. But they need to be recognized as two separate and different entities that provide that accreditation to our accrediting bodies.
Yes, that's correct. There's two type of accreditations. There's the school accreditation, and then there's a program accreditation. And so both program accreditation, which is ASHA and ACAE, they do require the same university accreditation that we require. So that's what the table is explaining. And so.
Okay, is there any board discussion on 10H? Hearing none, I'd like to have somebody, if you'd like, you can use the suggested motion language because the staff does recommend that the board discuss these materials and may wish to determine whether or not to approve this regulatory language and initiate the rulemaking process. So on page 2 of 2, on the handout for 10H is some suggested motion language.
Would you like me to read the motion, Dr. Raggio?
Well, usually the person making it can read it, but Dr. White it seems to fall in her lap every time. Can we ask you one more time, Dr. White, to
Sure.
Read the language and make that motion?
Absolutely. So Dr. White, move to approve the proposed regulatory text for 16 CCR section 1399.152 and direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. Authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations at 16 CCR section 1399.152 as noticed.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment, please.
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. Everyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Let's take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request on the motion, shall we check the physical locations?
Absolutely. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center?
There is not.
Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There is not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There is not.
Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
There is not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any of the physical locations. And that concludes
thank you.
public comment.
If there's no further board discussion, I'd like to call for a vote on 10H, the motion on 10H. Excuse me.
Dr. Raggio,
Aye.
Ms. Chang,
Aye.
Mr. Danduran,
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez,
Aye.
Dr. Valdez,
Aye.
Dr. White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We have one last item under the regulatory package discussion. So if Ms. Lorenzo would like to discuss 10I, or Ms. Burns as well, I think.
Yes. 10I is proposed changes to the hearing aid dispensers trainee and temporary license supervision. Business and Profession Codes Section 2538 allows a hearing aid dispensers trainee to work under the supervision of a hearing aid dispenser who's approved by the board for up to 18 months. At its October 2017 meeting, the board discussed concerns with the HAD trainee and supervision requirements. Concerns discussed included the need for clarity in the amount and type of supervision and the need to better define supervision. Also discussed were concerns with the requirements for supervisors and the training of trainees. The board delegated 2 board members to work with board staff and DCA to draft regulatory language. The proposed regulatory language was reviewed and discussed at the board's August 2018 meeting. The discussion focused on continuing education requirements for supervising dispensers, knowledge and skills that must be included during training, and the requirements for direct and immediate supervision. At its November 2018 meeting, board approved revisions to the proposed language. However, due to limited staff resources and the COVID pandemic, this has been delayed. The Hearing Aid Dispensing Committee reviewed the proposed regulations at its August 2022 meetings, October 2022, and February 23 meetings. And so there's a summary of changes to the proposed regulations that were adopted by the board in November 2018. And we do have some discussion questions for each, for some areas that may need a little bit more clarity to begin the rulemaking process. Let's see, so I could just go into discussion questions. The first question is, does the required practice experience for supervisors need to be immediately before supervision, or is it just 3 consecutive years? And that is in 2 sections, which is sections 1399.15B and 1399.116B.
So just to clarify, sometimes we say immediately preceding the application, so it's sometime in the recent, the 3 consecutive years, not just any time.
Is that preferred, that it's more immediate rather than just some 3 consecutive years in the past?
It's usually more helpful. So if someone left the profession and then comes back, they would have had 3 years of experience maybe 10 years ago, but it's not 3 years of experience now with current standards and training. So it's kind of one of those, it's preferable that it's more like immediately preceding the application, right? That kind of a deal.
Yeah. Let me just see something.
I would agree with that statement. I don't know, Dr. Raja, if you agree, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. Okay, so we're going to discussion question number 2.
Question number 2 is, should the knowledge of sound field testing be included as a verification technique in section 1399.1A C10? Since it is covered in the knowledge points in the hearing aid dispensers examination. And that's, you could find that in attachment the 2020 HAD written examination outline.
We would just take a moment to let everyone in the public know that these documents are available on our website, on our meetings page. I do have them up. Unfortunately, the orientation is a little off there, so I don't know if anyone wants to keep their neck on that, but it is available on our website.
Well, it seems like for consistency, we would keep that in.
So you would like to add that in?
Well, I thought you said that it's already in the examination. Did I understand that right, Maria?
Yes.
It's in the exam, but we're talking.
We're on page, it's attachment C, page 9. You'll see that one of the tasks is evaluate outcomes of hearing aid fitting with verification measures. For example, sound field testing, real ear.
So then the question is adding it to the training requirements.
I would say yes.
It's in the examination knowledge points, but not in the training requirements.
I'm sorry, say that again, Sherry.
Oh, sorry. It's currently in the knowledge points that are tested within the written examination. It is not currently in the regulation, the revised portion of the training regulation. So that's why we're recommending adding that. And thank you, David, for the orientation on these.
I think that's a reasonable addition. It's a common practice.
Can I ask a question? This is John Dandrin. Is there an actual training manual for a supervisor now? Because I have not looked at it in years, if there is.
There is not one that I know of. I am rather new to this board. Only been here 3 years, but I have not seen one. It is recommended that you look over the knowledge and task knowledge and
No, but outside of the regulations, there is no training manual.
but there is a knowledge and skills that we post online. That's what should be an outline of what people should know when they're coming in to take the written examination. And then the same thing for the practical examination when they come in for the hands-on examination as well. Along with the candidate handbook that provides additional information on what might or might not be required to be performed during the examination.
And so if hearing aids are dispensed at a convalescent hospital or something along those lines, how would they perform sound field? And I'm not sure that's even an appropriate question, but I guess that's.
It would be during the duration of the license. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's done all the time. It's just that is a skill that should be taught during the license period when appropriate.
Very good. I agree with that.
And you will notice that we pointed it out to be a knowledge of that item. So.
Could you, I assume the attachments are in this document that was emailed this morning. Could you give me the page number for, you said it, amendment or attachment C? What page is that?
Attachment C, page 9. And it should be the first item listed on that page. And that's comparable to what we have in section 1399.1A C10.
Knowledge point 170. You're looking at that table on page 9.
I don't know, this is very confusing. Okay, let's continue with the discussion questions.
Okay, so the next discussion question is regarding the same section. We did have, it was expressed during the committee meeting that there might be some costs to requiring the verification techniques for hearing aid fitting. And an analysis would need to be justified to justify this requirement since it was expressed during the meeting. And we have included, we did do an analysis of what it could cost a business to have to purchase a device to be able to train their trainee to perform this as attachment E. And so we wanted to present it to the board so that the board can discuss if it's still, if requiring if verification technique as performing it would be burdensome to businesses, or if, as discussed also in committee, that should it be the knowledge of.
So
Well, I can
essentially,
offer
okay.
Go ahead.
The board was concerned about the Office of Administrative Law and making sure we justify all the requirements, that there are no less costly alternative methods available or alternative methods entirely to some of these things due to the high cost, so that we make sure that this package is extremely sound in moving forward and we don't run into roadblocks with tightening up the training and supervision requirements for the hearing aid trainees. So we started to look into some of these items that we would have to get a deeper dive into the cost analysis and the cost benefit analysis.
Well, I think best practices would dictate that somebody be trained to do an electroacoustic analysis of a hearing aid for sure. Real ear measurements, on the other hand, are they are part of best practices and is fairly essential in trying to determine the best fitting. I understand that it's expensive to do this. I'd like to ask Dr. White to add her comment, her thoughts to this issue, because it is expensive equipment.
Well, I don't disagree with you, Dr. Raggio, as always, on the importance of having electroacoustic analysis capability as well as real ear capability, and the importance of anyone dispensing hearing aids to understand how to use such equipment. I'm wondering if coming from the board is more, or from the board staff is more concerned about whether or not it's most appropriate to include that language in this area, or if we, if that's something that is better dealt with elsewhere. I think the concern is we had a lot of trainee, language that we needed to get done, and we want to have that supervision package passed, and whether or not, we can tackle everything we want to tackle right at this juncture.
Sharice and Maria, do you have thoughts about that?
Can I comment, Sharice, on that? Just,
yeah.
I just wanted to kind of interject some thought in that too, Dr. Raggio. When we're looking at these rulemaking files and trying to move forward, and we've been successful in making some of these changes, and we've also had holdups because sometimes these analyses will take some time to to provide. So we may want to consider moving forward with the knowledge of, so that we could get this moving more quickly, and then come back and look at training requirements, true training requirements. Because if we put this in here and let's say we say you have to have this kind of equipment, we still don't have a way of enforcing that. We don't have a way of knowing that it's being done. So it might be better to kind of step back and take a broader view and look at what's the best way to ensure that trainees are being trained. And, you know, is there some, John Dandran mentioned a training manual. I know that's something the board has discussed in the past. Maybe that's something, you know, that we could look into to make sure that the people that are coming to take the exam are trained and prepared to take the exam, not just preparing to take the exam, but that they're actually getting the training that they need out in the field. And that would give us a more complete trainee program and a trainee supervision oversight.
I think that's essentially where staff wants to go, is we really, as someone who watches trainees come in and try to take and pass the exam, we want them to do their best. We want them to have strong supervision and training. But we also want to make sure we don't get hung up on a couple items that may need a little, not a little, but a lot more in-depth dive into and cost analysis, and not get these other stronger supervision requirements and guidance in there.
I understand and appreciate what Paul's saying about knowledge of. I think knowledge of is helpful in getting something through, and the realistic aspect of this. I can argue this at some later time that I don't think electroacoustic analysis equipment is superfluous, that we might have it, we might not. I think it's an essential piece. Really, or on the other hand, because we have other verification techniques, perhaps not as good, but we do have those. But having said that, knowledge of, I can live with that. Any other comments about that discussion question?
I appreciate hearing everyone's comments on this, and I would lean more towards the having knowledge of it at this point. I think we're dealing with small, large businesses, small businesses, and yeah, the economic issue is probably a big problem. The having the ability to have training and or even having mandated at the state to have some sort of 3-month college course or some sort of course that has, where they have the equipment. So now a trainee needs to, part of their training is to go through this course at, that might be at community colleges, and they can supply this type of equipment to teach them that aspect of it, which takes the burden off of the small business. So food for thought moving forward.
Okay, we're going to look at discussion question number 4.
Yes, discussion question number 4. Should the definition of direct and immediate supervision in section 1399 be similar? If so, suggest removing "and a supervising dispensers available at all times" from A, and adding where the trainee of temporary license is engaged in the practice of fitting and selling of hearing aids in subsection B after same room.
So the question is, should the definition be similar between those two descriptors, direct and?
Yeah, one of them is available at all times. And so I just wasn't sure if maybe we should remove it so that we can just keep it where we specify in E and F. How often, the frequency of the supervision and the amount.
Just removing.
And just to clarify, is this related to the recent, clarification of what direct versus indirect means? And then we're just trying to keep that consistent language now throughout?
Yes, just to keep the format of how we describe our supervision the same. That way it reduces any confusion to other requirements we may add in a different section.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that question? Okay, it looks like we have one more discussion question.
It's similar to what we're discussing, just making the language a little similar in places where they're kind of talking about the same thing but have different requirements. Should the supervision amount in supervision in section 1399 be similar? And E and F is what we're looking at. So currently it says adding at all times in section
in E and F.
Yeah, so instead of saying 100% of the time, just say at all times. And then doing the same thing in section F.
Okay, so is there any further board discussion on the discussion questions and the issues they brought up? Not seeing any. On page 3 of 3, the action required is that the board may wish to determine whether or not to amend and approve the revised regulatory language and initiate the rulemaking process. Any further discussion on that? Okay, knowing that we may revisit aspects of this later on. The suggested motion language. If somebody would like to make the motion.
This is Dr. White. I guess I'll keep that ball rolling.
Thank you so much.
Move to approve the proposed regulatory text for 16 CCR sections 1399.102 and 1399.115 through 1399.119. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. Authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking, including any non-substantive changes to the package, and adopt the proposed regulations at 16 CCR sections 1399.102 and 1399.115 through 1399.119 as noticed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
As amended. I'm sorry, as amended. Not as noticed.
Second.
So.
Go ahead.
So I'm learning the process, guys, so bear with me here. So if we are not in agreement on the discussion questions of number 3 and the way it is written currently, it would require that we purchase equipment versus just knowledge. At
So
this juncture, if we need to amend that, what is what is the procedure to have that amended? If we vote agreeing or approving it as it is, we are then we are saying that we agree with number 3 of the discussions. Or if we say nay at this point or no, where does it go from there? So I
This is Karen
apologize. I
Halbo.
apologize.
This is Sharif. Can I go ahead and, it sounds like from our discussion that we're actually taking amendments. So Dr. White noted to revise her motion from as noticed to as amended. And in the discussion questions, we are taking yes to the changes in question 1, yes to the change in question 2. In question 3, moving to the knowledge of rather than experience with. In number 4, it's a yes to changing those, the verbiage in there as stated in the question 4. And then in 5, changing that as stated to put at all times instead of the 100%. And all of those amendments would be in the clean copy that the board would see next. This is an iterative stage. The regulatory process is always an iterative stage. So you'll find it as you go along these board meetings. You're like, wait, I just reviewed that and approved that at a couple meetings ago. Yes, you did. And now we have a couple more changes because this is just the first step in a long process where the board will work with legal counsel and we'll take a look at all of the information, bring up any other questions or concerns that the Office of Administrative Law has. We might even come back to you with amendments before it even gets to the official notice stage. So it actually goes through an internal review process before we get to the Office of Administrative Law for notice. And then every time the public gets a chance to comment on the revisions, and then if we make changes, which we can do after public comment or based on public comment, we again can make changes up until the end where we have to adopt the final reasons and final language and get it to the Office of Administrative Law within 1 year of notice. So many more steps along the way where things can change. This one, since we're approving it as amended, it would take into effect the answers to the discussion questions, and that would change it to knowledge of for question 3.
Thank you very much for that explanation. That is very helpful, and I am wiping some of the perspiration off my brow. So thanks.
I always like to say it's an iterative process, I promise.
This is Karen Halbo, the Regulations Counsel. And I would just like to add, she is right, it's an iterative process. And when the 45-day notice comes out, anything that is reasonably related and covered by what that notice is can be modified by the board. You can't add in something completely unrelated to this and stick it in the package, but changing the sort of language and discussion that was had today, that is within the scope of what will go out for 45-day notice. And the board is, until they adopt the language as final and tell staff to file it with the Office of Administrative Law, can make tweaks along the way.
Thanks again for the explanation. That is helpful.
Any further board discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to ask the moderator to open for public comment.
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of your screen to raise a hand. Dial-in users will dial *3. Everyone may type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants if they so wish. And our first request comes from caller user 4. Hang on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute. You'll be given 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. You may need to dial *6 in order to unmute.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Very good. This is Joe Bartlett. I called in on my phone earlier and I've been doing the webinar through my computer, so I went this way, but this is Joe Bartlett from Hearing Healthcare Providers of California, immediate past president. And I want to start by actually just saying congratulations, John, for being on the board. It's wonderful having an additional perspective and the additional perspiration. I know that a lot of work has been done by the current board members to get to this point and get this language. So it's definitely a workable point. Another point of being no training manual, I'm sure that's something that's going to change. And I would like to definitely put, sorry, it's talking right here. Sorry, I would love to put HHP on the table as somebody who'd be willing to help with that process of creating the training manual. And I'm sure CAA would be willing to as well. I would add one more comment for possibly the future. I know that we'll mention it in the 45-day commenting period, but the knowledge of electrical acoustic analysis equipment, I believe, would actually be better served by knowledge of electrical acoustic analysis testing, because that's the point, is the test being done, not the equipment that's used to do it. So that's my main sense of comment. In the training process, which someone like HHP or even CAA would be doing in the future, if we did have to get this equipment in order to do the training, it would be costly for also us for the training process. The equipment has to be calibrated on a yearly basis, or at least in a regular basis, and that is not an inexpensive process either. So I do really appreciate the changes that this board decided to make today. And like I said, would make one further comment of the word equipment being changed to testing. And I appreciate all the work that's done to get there. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. And that was our only request for comment online. Shall we check our physical locations?
Absolutely. Dr. White, is there any public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Dominguez or Ms. Chang, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
There is not.
Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There is not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There's not.
And Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
No, there's not.
There is no public comment at any of the physical locations, and that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. If there isn't any further board discussion, hearing none, I'd like to call the vote on the motion on the table.
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
Mr. Dan Duran.
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez.
Aye.
Dr. Valdez.
Aye.
And Dr. White.
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Thank you. That completes the regulatory package discussion. Thank you very much, Maria and Cherise, for all your work to put this together. For us, it's quite a complex thing, but it's very helpful to see how the process is done. And I believe Maria has put stages of the regulatory process in our board book, so you can see how it moves through its stages and why it takes often very long to get a regulatory change into place. Anyway, thank you so much for that. I'd like to move on to agenda item 11, future agenda items. Can I ask board members and board staff if there are any future agenda items you'd like to propose for a future meeting? And just for John's edification, you don't have to think of something now. You can think of things coming up, and you can inform the board staff of any interest you have.
And currently,
Thanks.
do not have any.
Okay. Can I ask the moderator to open for public comments?
We are now accepting public comment on future agenda items. If you'd like to make a comment, please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen to raise a hand. Dial *3 if you're a call-in user, or type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. We're going to give just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment on future agenda items. Seeing none online, would you like to check our physical locations?
Yes, if Sharice would.
So sorry. Dr. White, is there anyone for public comment at the board office?
There is not.
Ms. Chang or Ms. Dominguez, is there any public comment at the Galeras Family Education Center location?
There is not.
Dr. Raggio, is there any public comment at the Hearing Science of Daly City location?
There is not.
Mr. Dan Duran, is there any public comment at the Simi Valley Public Library location?
There's not.
Dr. Valdez, is there any public comment at the Stanford University location?
There is not.
Thank you. There is no public comment at any of the physical locations.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if we are going to go into closed session at this point. Would anybody like to have a 10-minute break before we do that, or should we press ahead?
I think a 10-minute break would be nice, or even 10 minutes. This is Karen.
Okay, let's do 10.
Okay.
And for members of the public, this is the board's legal counsel. We will be adjourning directly after closed session. So this now concludes the public portion of the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance and participation.
Sorry, I thought I could say that later. Okay, but you're right.
Well, hopefully we can use the break to go through the procedure of closing the meeting to everyone except for myself, board members, and our note taker.
Okay, did you say you want to use the break time to do that?
That's mostly for me, the moderator. I'll get working on that right away. All right, I'm going to start what WebEx calls the practice session.